Hello my fellow gamers and welcome once again to Perafilozofy battle tutorials. This time I'm going to show you the second part of the basic battle tutorial. This is going to cover guerrilla deployment, guard mode, and how to use your units effectively in a battle. At the moment I only have a few units that can actually be deployed as guerrillas in this white area here. The problem here is that they have no cavalry support and no archer support, which means that if I were to place them here, the rest of my army being here, they wouldn't be able to be supported. If you want to fight as a guerrilla army, you have to have all the units have this guerrilla deployment trait. Since I do not have that, I'm just gonna keep back and do a normal formation. So in the front, I'm going to put my archers drawn out like this, turn off their skirmish ability so that they don't get chased off if an enemy unit just gets close in, and I do plan for them to get close in. Then I'm going to put the Azure Dragons here with their fire at will ability, turned off the melee mode, lock them into group 3. If you want to learn more about formations and locking into groups, you can watch my first basic tutorial. The archers are in the front. The Azure Dragons, as a heavy glaive infantry, can fight any cavalry that actually sneaks in and gets close to these archers. I just need to transfer them to melee mode, turn off the fire at will. Now as for my front ranks, these are going to be the Protectors of Heaven, 2 units. Then the heavy spear infantry on their flanks, although they can keep good damage against the enemy cavalry if they attack because of the glaives. On the flanks of these units, I'm going to have these 2 sword units. They are not particularly strong in their morale, so I want them to actually be flank attack units and not frontline units, because they might rout very easily if they get overwhelmed. The cavalry is going to go on the flanks, with spear cavalry going front and sword cavalry going in the back, also with a general and a hero unit there. Also on the other flank, the same setup. I'm going to have these sword cav in the back, and in the front the cav with spears, because I want them to be the first ones in. I am going to lock them in as well, push them up forward here, have the same setup on the other wing, locked in, and then sent on the flanks of these units. And now I just need to make group 1 with the general being in the middle to support these units. They can also be locked in and moved forward. You can use the arrow keys for fine-tuning of your formation. I have attempted to record this battle tutorial as I was playing the battle itself, but it turned out the battles are really short and hectic for this to be efficiently passed along knowledge. So I kind of opted for just recording a battle and then recording my voiceover later, so I could more efficiently explain and better show my points, rather than just trying to quickly talk and quickly battle and then skip over important things. And one of those important points is the guard mode. It's an option that you can turn on even on the options menu of the game itself, which means that every time you fight a battle, it's on by default. So I would advise you to do that, and this is why. The guard mode allows for your units to fight, but then stop fighting once they've managed to run off an enemy unit. As soon as the enemy unit starts to flee, your unit is going to stop right where it was fighting, instead of chasing after that unit. This is going to allow you to use your unit to attack another enemy close by unit, and not have your unit wander off all the way to the edge of the battlefield chasing after a fleeing unit. Now this will reduce the amount of kills you get from fleeing units, and they might reform after they've run away far enough, but it's far more important for you to be able to use that unit to make another enemy unit flee by back or flank attack, than to just keep chasing down a broken enemy unit. The guard mode is represented by the shield icon, which is the 4th icon from the left, which I will mark right now. You can turn it on or off for individual units, but using the menu option will have it turned on for you always for all units. Some players might like to turn it off for the cavalry units, as cavalry units can run down enemy fleeing units more quickly and then come back to the battlefield. In this battle, I'm fighting against the AI on its hardest difficulty, with funds being just a bit higher than what you would have in the ranked multiplayer. Now we come to the main part of this video, using your units effectively. The AI has set up his army so that his right flank is composed of entirely cavalry. His left and middle are infantry and bowmen. He also has some kind of a hero units because he has a very powerful bow unit, a very powerful infantry unit, and a very powerful cav unit. This means that I have to respond by moving my spearmen from my back position over to my left flank in order to be able to support my cavalry that is outnumbered on that flank, while my cavalry on my right flank is going to be able to go around the enemy. Because he's coming to me, I can set up my archers in front of my army and keep shooting at his infantry as they come in closer. What you should take note here is the length of my units. They're only 3 to 5 men deep, and then they stretch from left to right, turned about towards the enemy, and they are actually in 3 ranks deep. I have the spears and glaives at the front, I have the swords on the flanks, which are the second line, and I have those spearmen which are moving over to the left, which were in the 3rd rank. This allows to have a compact unit which is covered by the general area of influence, and also allows you to envelop the enemy like Hannibal did to the Romans by placing your furthest units, the ones on your flanks, like horns, and then spreading around the enemy and attacking their flanks and hopefully their backs. This also gives you the added benefit of maybe able to get a single unit of yours on the front line struck by 2 enemy units. And soldiers only fight about 1 rank or maybe even sometimes 2 ranks deep. So only the first 2 ranks are actually fighting. The 3rd and the 4th ranks are the reserve, and everything deeper than that is just a waste of soldiers. So you want to be only deep as many soldiers as you need to actually fight, and if the enemy comes at you with a formation that's actually 10 men deep, then half of his units are totally wasted, and if you can envelop 2 enemy units with a single unit of yours, you have extra units that you can send on the flanks. Now let's take a look at the left flank, where I have not managed to micro my cavalry and end up getting struck by the enemy's cavalry. Luckily for me, he spread out as much as I did, so we just impacted with 2 units and the rest of my forces were behind, so I was able to get there in time and click on the enemies to attack them. At this point, with my vanguard here, I am able to defeat some of his units, but sooner or later my vanguard will be necessary to attack the infantry in the back, so him being in a cavalry battle isn't something you wanna prolong. The spearmen I pulled from the infantry's formations last rank and put them on the left flank to try and attack the enemy cavalry did perfectly, although the problem is that they get overrun if they get attacked with too many units, and their morale isn't that great, so by getting attacked with a melee unit, several cavalry units, they do flee eventually. But the important thing is that they did their job. They held up several units of enemy cavalry and even infantry for my infantry to be able to find holes in the enemy's formation and attack the enemy's backs on the front ranks. In the records mode, attacking enemy units from the back while they are engaged at the front and even attacking them at the flank is pretty much a guaranteed route. So you always want to hold them up at the front, attack them on the flank, and if you can on the back as well. Flaming arrows additionally will take their morale even further down and will make them run away even though they haven't lost too many men in their unit. The archers were up till now on fire at will, but as soon as I use the fire arrows, I want to target enemy units that are close to breaking. But that leads to a problem. An archer unit will actually keep trying to shoot at that unit even though it's running away. Even though it's on the guard mode, it's still gonna try to keep that enemy unit in its range. So you have to be careful that once you actually rout those enemy units, you pull back those archers, and as you saw, 2 of my units actually entered the melee combat trying to do this. If you want to try to achieve the hammer and navel tactics also with flank attacks and fire arrows into the enemy's midst, you have to make sure that your frontline units are actually the highest quality units that are going to need a lot of damage before their morale drops. If you send the weaker units up front, you use fire arrows, which are inevitably going to lead to friendly fire. You use flank or back attacks with the enemy, maybe doing some flank or back attacks as well on your units. You're going to have a mass rout on your front ranks. That is why you want high morale units on your front ranks. You can see here that the units from the enemy army that are fleeing are actually the lowest morale units. This is because after they engaged in combat, they were shot with fire arrows, there were some flank and back attacks, and this makes them flee even though they might not be yet ready, depending on how many men they've lost. There is this rule in Total War games. It goes as following: bow beats spear, spear beats cav, cav beats bow. This means effectively that there's always a unit that you can use to destroy the enemy's units most effectively. But sometimes you really have to be flexible and use what's available and at hand. You also need to remember that morale is actually where you win the battle. You're rarely going to be able to destroy an enemy's units completely and destroy every single soldier in a unit. Most of the time you're gonna make them flee. And that is the reason why you have to remember that you have to be flexible and use any unit available at hand to do those back flank attacks and be able to hold up the enemy units regardless of exactly what kind of units there are, if you're achieving the aim of making them flee the battle. The famous Chinese military strategist and general and also philosopher talked about this. He always pointed out that you should break the enemy's morale and not use up your soldiers just to try and kill the enemy. In the records mode of Total War 3 Kingdoms, the generals are not as important as in the romance mode, where the entire army is probably gonna rout as soon as all three are dead. But here also the units are going to get a morale debuff if their generals are killed on the battlefield or forced off of it to flee. That is why you need to use your duelist to try and kill off the enemy's general, also to use the vanguard to keep hitting the enemies in the back, and if you have to use him, then use him against the enemy generals as well. Your sentinel, strategist or commander should be the last resort to use against enemy units when you see a problem in your battle lines that requires fixing, and a quick fix, because those commanders, strategists and sentinels cannot really hold in battle for long. The battle that you're watching right now is entering its late phase. This is the part of the battle where your frontline units are already broken or failing or running away. The second ranks are the ones that are holding the battle, with your archers and cavalry being also spent. The archers are getting close to the exhausting their ammo, while the cavalry is pretty much down to its last few percentages. This is the moment where you have to be very careful about which units you send against which. You can use your archers as a plug in the formations of your frontal units, but they are not going to last long, and they're quickly going to drown in the problem of trying to fight with their bad equipment against very effective soldiers on the front lines that are probably the infantry of their glaives. So even if you're using those archers as a shock troop, you should try to use them as flanking or back attackers and not frontline fighters. The expanded cavalry units are also just to be used as a morale hitter. They cannot really do much damage against the enemy units when they're down to a few men per unit. As this battle is drawing to a close, let's just recap. If you want to do guerrilla deployment, you need pretty much all your units and generals to actually have the guerrilla deployment trait, so you can put up your army at a position that it can support each other with cavalry, infantry and bow units or crossbowmen units or whatever other range units you have. Secondly, the guard mode is a must when you're fighting a large battle, because you do not want your units running away after enemy units who are already fleeing, but to be able to use them against the enemy's units on the flanks or backs. Third, and the most important point, is to use your units effectively, meaning that you're going to attack the enemy's units with your units that are going to inflict the maximum damage. And if those units are not available, you're going to use any unit you can to achieve your objective. Thank you all for watching, and please stay tuned for more videos.